Hello everyone, this is Rexer from the YouTube channel NotQuiteThereGaming, and welcome to the second episode of my pretentiously named advice series. Today I will be showing you my Nova build for Warframe. Now, Nova is a damage-focused caster Warframe, so it doesn't take much work to turn her into a glass cannon, which is exactly what we will be doing today. Now, first things first, this build needs 3 formas, so not only did I give her 2 tactical polarities using Forma, but I turned one of her ability polarities into another tactical polarity, because I love tactical polarities. That's something you'll be finding out quite soon if you haven't already. There are a lot of tactical mods that are really good to slot, and of course, the first one that we'll be slotting is the Aura Energy Siphon, which also fits into a tactical polarity, because tactics is awesome. Now, because Nova is a caster Warframe, she obviously wants as much energy as possible. So, this time around, even though Energy Siphon only supplies a very small energy regeneration, Nova can use anything she can get in that department. And it's pretty much the best and advisably the only aura that you should be considering slotting into Nova. Now, the first ability for Nova would be Nullstar. But I don't like Nullstar. Nullstar is arguably efficient. It's useful in some situations, but I find that it's very efficient at making you use energy when you shouldn't be using energy, and useful in situations where you would rather be using a gun. So, unless you really want to go full caster and not shoot anything ever, you probably don't need Nullstar. Now, since I will be focusing on 2 other of her abilities, I have opted to help those along instead of trying to use Nullstar effectively. And to help those along, I will be slotting Flow. Flow boosts her maximum power. That is the maximum amount of energy that she can store. She doesn't need this mod. It's not a requirement. But for a caster Warframe like her, and a damage-focused caster Warframe like her, you want to have that buffer that makes you feel safe. So, you don't want to have that split second or even that several seconds of indecision where you're asking yourself, do I really want to cast this right now? You want to have a huge buffer of energy that just lets you do it. That's what Flow does for you. It essentially doubles her maximum stored energy, and you won't be running out of energy unless you start using it very haphazardly, very erratically. You can make do with this mod and the efficiency mods that we will be slotting next, and you can pretty much be casting with her all the time, anytime you need. In the few situations where you will be finding yourself without any energy, you're probably not going to make it anyway. By the time she runs out of energy, there's probably no saving you. I'm sorry. You're gonna need good teammates at that point, and if you don't have them, it doesn't matter anyway. Now, the next ability that we will be slotting is Antimatter Drop. And Antimatter Drop was a skill that I was very skeptical about when she was first being built, when she was first being conceived by Digital Extremes and the founders that got input on her creation. I thought it was just gonna be another one-click instant damage skill, throw a ball of something at something and it explodes and blah 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 damage. it has that component. You basically materialize a ball of electromagnetically contained antimatter, and it does damage. It follows your targeting reticule, so it's quote-unquote seeking or guided, and it does do instant damage, but it also absorbs damage that you shoot into it. So in that sense, it's a lot like Nyx's Absorb ultimate ability, except it's delivered in a different way. Now, Antimatter Drop has a very small initial damage, relatively small initial damage, guaranteed initial damage, but the damage that it absorbs, it also multiplies, which can quickly spiral out of control. And when I say out of control, I mean fun times for everyone. Oh yes. I love this skill. I think it's awesome. I don't use it as much as I want to use it, but it's fantastic. And it also has a fun component in that it pierces walls. In practice, it doesn't actually pierce everything. So if you shoot this at a door and expect to kill every enemy on the other side of the door, you might miss one or two of the enemies for inexplicable reasons, but through experimentation you can come to understand the situations where you can't be 100% reliant on that particular component of it. And in all other situations, it's great, especially with the next mod that we will be slotting, the mod that will replace her third ability, Wormhole. Wormhole is a movement ability. It creates a portal of sorts, and you can move through it along with up to 3 other people to a target location designated by your reticule at the time of casting. It's an expensive ability. It's a questionably useful ability. Sometimes it's really awesome. Other times it's just a complete waste of a mod slot. So we won't be using that. Instead, we will be using Enemy Radar, because I love Enemy Radar. It's a great, and I'm going to say it again, grossly undervalued defensive and offensive mod, which in the case of Nova actually has a few hidden or interestingly synergetic uses. For example, with Antimatter Drop, because Antimatter Drop pierces walls and other obstacles, by using Enemy Sense, you will know where the enemies are, even through walls. So, you're a glass cannon. You can't take many hits, but with Enemy Sense, you can already tell that there's 10 guys on the other side of that wall. You have Antimatter Drop, you fire it, you shoot a little bit into it to charge it up, then collide it with the wall, and instantaneously those 10 enemies on the other side of the wall, which never even saw you, are dead. And then you can just walk through the door, tra-la-la, you're king of the house. Or in this case, queen of the house, as you will. The last ability that we will be slotting for Nova is Molecular Prime. Molecular Prime is the skill that either makes you love or hate Nova. You love Nova because you're playing as Nova and you explode everything around you, or you hate Nova because you're playing in the same team as Nova and she's exploding everything and you don't get to shoot anything. Now, Molecular Prime is a skill that I was very proud to support while she was being created by Digital Extremes and the founders. And Molecular Prime is consisting of basically two components that form a singularly awesome skill. The first one is a debuff that decreases enemy speed and attack speed within a fairly large radius. And this debuff applies to all enemies within range at the time of casting, even through walls, etc. It's something that makes this skill useful even at very high levels, when the enemies are too tough to be affected by the secondary component. And at that point it basically becomes a great debuffing skill. Now the second component of this skill is the explosion. The explosions, actually. The chain reaction of destructive beauty that is what most people see of Molecular Prime. Now these explosions do not pierce obstacles like antimatter drops explosion does. But, as I said, they chain. If a single enemy that you debuffed Molecular Prime takes enough damage to die while under the effects of Molecular Prime, they will explode. Now the base damage is 800, which is respectable. We will be amplifying that to ludicrous levels, and this damage then explodes, blasts outwards, does not pierce any obstacles, but it has a good chance of hitting another person that has been debuffed by Molecular Prime. Now when that other person, target, what have you, is hit by this 800 damage, they will be probably killed, which means they explode as well. And that means that that explosion might hit someone else debuffed by Molecular Prime, and then they die as well, and so on and so on. And in a tight cluster of enemies, this can lead to ludicrous levels of damage, and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Also, component of the debuff that I forgot to mention is that it increases damage taken by the debuffed enemies. So an enemy debuffed by Molecular Prime will take about twice the damage it normally would, which is also a component of why this skill is good to have even at very high levels, when the damage of the explosion part is slowly becoming not completely irrelevant, but not as useful as it would be otherwise. Now, as I've said, first we want to be enhancing the damage of Molecular Prime to make it have a wider range of relevancy. That is, to make it be as effective as possible against as high level an enemy as possible. So, in order to do that, we will be first using Focus. Focus is the bread and butter ability damage enhancing mod. It's a small increase, relatively small increase, considering the next mod that we will be slotting, which is Blind Rage. Blind Rage is a Oracle Vault only mod, and it's very expensive to boost to its fullest capacity. It also has a downside in that it decreases power efficiency. It actually increases the amount of energy that you need to use for every skill. That we will be addressing soon enough. But through a combination of both of these skills, you can turn 800 damage done by Molecular Prime into maybe about 1800 damage done by Molecular Prime, which means it can remain relevant for roughly twice the enemy level range, as it would normally. It also enhances the minimum guaranteed damage of antimatter drop, but that's not very important. So you could do without these if you don't care that much about molecular prime and you just want to focus on antimatter drop, because it functions mostly on absorbed damage, which it then multiplies. But since we want to have molecular prime as a main feature of this build, we also want to boost its damage. Now, as I've said, Blind Rage reduces power efficiency, so we need to fix that. And the first thing we need to do to fix that is get Streamline. Streamline is the bread and butter power efficiency mod. It's also a very slight boost, and as you can see, it leaves about a 15% deficiency still in effect. So that's why we will be using Fleeting Expertise this time in conjunction with Streamline. Now, Fleeting Expertise and Streamline together not only overcome the downside of Blind Rage, but also give you a little bit of extra power efficiency. And that's good because you're a caster Warframe and you want to be spamming those skills. Fleeting Expertise reduces power duration, which would, oddly enough, affect Null Star, but we're not using that, so we don't need to get into it. And it should affect Molecular Prime's debuff component, but it doesn't, because that's the way it was coded. Next, we want to be using Stretch, because explosions are great, but bigger explosions are even better. Stretch is a no downside range extension mod, and there is an Orokin Vault range extension mod, which is Overextend, but the downside of that is, of course, that it reduces power strength, which goes against what we are trying to do right now with Nova. Now, you could be using Overextend if you want to make an antimatter drop only build. That would increase the range of the explosion of antimatter drop so much that it would be a skill that you could be using primarily and to great effect to kill big crowds of enemies. But again, there are some quirks about the way antimatter drop pierces obstacles, which could leave you not actually using the full range of Overextend. Stretch amplifies the explosion of antimatter drop. It also amplifies the debuff range of Molecular Prime, and it amplifies the explosion range of Molecular Prime. Which also means that if every enemy becomes essentially a walking bomb, having more walking bombs in range of a particularly stubborn enemy means that that enemy will be taking much more damage. The last mod that I will be using on Nova is Rush, and Rush is a mod that enhances her speed. Nova is a very fast Warframe, which is very useful since she isn't a very durable Warframe. She, in fact, is the second fastest Warframe in the game right now, second only behind Loki. Rush enhances her speed by an okay amount, especially since her speed will be the only defensive tactic that we will be employing for this build. Now, hold on. You're telling me I'm crazy, or you're trying to flip your table, or you're starting to rage at your computer screen, or you're typing up a hateful YouTube comment already. Well, the reason why I don't have any survivability enhancing mods on Nova is she doesn't have that much survivability to begin with. If you're enhancing something that isn't that good to begin with, you're gonna end up with something that's mediocre at best. For the early levels, Nova's survivability is okay, and for the mid levels, she's gonna be squishy. She might be less squishy if you enhanced her shields or her health, but she wouldn't be on par with other Warframes. And in order to enhance her survivability, you would have to not use some of the mods that we are using already to enhance the skills that are good, the aspects of this Warframe that are good and that make her be a very viable caster Warframe. So she is literally the glass cannon. Now, at higher levels, the experience of playing as Nova can be widely different depending on which faction you're fighting against. Against the infected, you don't want to get close to toxic agents or the elementally charged crawlers. Otherwise, as long as you keep moving, and you can move pretty fast with Rush and with her innate speed, you will not be having any problems because you won't be getting hit at all. Most most infested are melee. So as long as you don't let them melee you or get into range to melee you, you'll be completely fine. Now, any level of infested can kill you pretty easily. That is something that not many people like to think about, or not many people actively realize. An infected charger deals a lot of damage at any level. So boosting her survivability in case someone were to hit her is not going to be doing her any favors. There are many infested that would be very capable of one-shotting Nova even with survivability increasing mods. Now, Corpus are a little trickier, but their projectiles are usually hampered by the fact that they have travel times. So as long as you keep moving, again, you can dodge their bullets, literally. Or rather, their plasma shots. You want to watch out for shockwaves, for railguns, and for laser rifle elites. Other than that, you can keep yourself pretty well defended by moving around against Corpus. Against Grunier, you're gonna be in trouble no matter what level you are, and that is the faction that you would most benefit against most benefit against by enhancing Nova's survivability. But even with Grunier, when you get to very high levels of defensive missions or certain event missions, the enemies will be one-shotting you. And because of the way Grunier weapons work, they are instant hit scan weapons, or close to it. And they will be one-shotting you as soon as they see you. In fact, at very high levels, enemies of any faction can get so damaging that they will instantly one-shot even tank Warframes. Which means that if you want to, like me, play very high-level defensive missions, you will be getting to that point, and there's nothing that you can do to your survivability to help you resist that kind of damage. So, Nova is a glass cannon, and you can do some things to change that around if you really want to. You can focus on antimatter drop and leave molecular prime as a skill that you only use for the debuff components. But I think the most fun way to play Nova is this way. Play her as a glass cannon, focus on her casting, on her strengths, and have the tools you need to scale even at high difficulties. An antimatter drop can do crazy amounts of damage at higher difficulties if you bring some good weapons with you. So, Nova is a caster Warframe that remains relevant at low levels, medium levels, and at high levels. She is arguably the best damage-focused caster Warframe in the game right now, and is a Warframe that I encourage you to try. Now, this has been it for my build of Nova. I will be making some more Warframe videos soon. Hopefully the next one will be about Loki. Please subscribe to my channel if you've enjoyed this video. Comment, thumbs up, share, tell your friends, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, and this has been Rexer of the YouTube channel NotQuiteThereGaming, signing off.